Go.
Evening, folks. Welcome to episode 2, dose of pucks on the patio. For our show today, we're going to be discussing a little bit about the Sabres draft picks and the next thing on the hockey calendar, of course, free agency and how it applies to the Sabres and their needs in goal and forward and defense. So just starting in on the draft, we saw Kevin Adams use analytics very deeply and take 3 centers in the first round. Alex?
All 3 guys. 3 young, good centers. Top of the class of their leagues. And from what I've read, all 3 by the analytics are very strong, high skilled, have great potential, could absolutely be on the bubble to be a top 6 forward. So Kevin Adams doing his tooling and analytics to once again hoard and stock some great young talent.
Yeah, to me, the kid that was drafted 9, Savoy, I hope I say his name right. He reminded me a lot of Danny Briere, just I guess even in his look, but they really said he's comparable to Braden Point. Or what other player were they saying he was familiar with? I don't know. I don't remember. But kind of on the smaller side, fast, a lot of skill set. And I know you were reading, Jeff, that they thought our third pick, Kulik, would be ready a lot sooner than the other 2. So hope that comes to fruition rather quickly. I know he's a great passer, correct?
Right, he's a playmaker.
Definitely a playmaker.
So, skill. People were upset we didn't draft size. I think, though, the way our team is heading, it's going to be skill. And I think they can always get some big bodies and some grit to put around them. What say you?
Well, for you folks who obviously are watching and following the team, you can dig into the individual players and where they came from and their numbers and all that. There's tons of stats and stuff and videos available on the internet. What we're going to look at really more is really how it applies to the Sabres. And one of the points that was brought up was Kevin Adams' plan to continue to build the organization, to continue to build the team strength, and continue to build the depth within that organization that Murray had basically stripped away in all his trades. And Alex has mentioned that they took 3 centers, and behind the guys that are on the roster, who do the Sabres have as centers?
Very deep at center. I mean, for what they have, like Casey Middlestead right now.
Right.
Dylan Cousins.
But down in Rochester, there's our favorite R2.
R2.
Yeah,
JJ.
Well, JJ's not a center.
Oh, Jack Quinn.
Quinn's not a center.
Wingers.
Yeah, so again, so we start losing that depth at center, which is what my point is.
The point, yeah.
So now you're starting that pipeline where you're going to get that depth of center, and using analytics basically was his basis for the picks.
Yeah. Understandably, yeah, he could have went with a bigger, grittier forward, I think, but lack of skill, maybe not great of a skater. We know that when you're a natural skater, a lot of good things can happen. So, skating's probably the hardest thing to teach some of these guys is to be a great skater. Defense, people were kind of squawking about, a couple people on Twitter. I think you could never have enough good defensemen, but I think they really plugged the need further down, like you said, behind a few of the guys that we actually have on the current roster. Your Thompsons, your Middlestead, your Cousins, and beyond that, and Krebs, there wasn't much as far as the center position. And I think as a center, they can always be moved to the wing, and I think even the scouts were saying that. So I think they did really well. I know other fans were pretty envious of how he did at the draft, and they gave him an A. So I would have given him around the same grade easily.
How does everybody feel about the goalie? Picking a goalie first pick in the second round.
It's always a good added piece. I mean, you can never have enough goalies, and adding him on top of Portillo and Devin Levi, maybe in a few years if things start to change, one of them come up and he comes over from overseas in the Finnish league. So, you can never have enough pipeline goaltenders. Just looking around the league and how other teams are kind of struggling, scrambling, us kind of being one of them to find a goalie. Even if they don't have a lot in their system, it's an added bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was a good pickup, always having that down in the pipeline. I know he's like 5-6 years away, but yeah, if you look at Levi and Portillo, hopefully one of them is ready to come up next year, maybe step into Rochester. Goaltending is my major one concern this year, and I'm sure every fan that watches this will agree. We have an unproven kid who played great last year's injury prone. And, even though Craig Anderson did great for his age, I know he went through a lot of injuries. It is a concern of mine this year, especially with the young defense that we have. So
One of the things that Adams does when he is building and developing is he puts himself, before he goes into any kind of negotiation, in a position of strength. In other words, he knows he's going to have to go out and get a goalie.
Right.
Yeah.
He knows it. But he's also got Craig Anderson in his back pocket to where if somebody says, well, I want more or I want this because you don't have a goalie, he can say, well, yeah, I do have a goalie.
Mm-hmm.
I have a starting goalie. I want to improve it. We have confidence in our guy, but we want to give opportunities to other people who want to come in. And I think that goalie is kind of like quarterback in the NFL. I think that every draft you should take one.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Because you never know when you might hit.
That's true. Yeah, it's kind of like always kind of taking a depth defenseman, even if it's later in the draft. I know we have a ton of prospects, but you can never have enough D.
Well,
And as you've seen in this year's draft, a lot of these teams, five of the defensemen or 5 top defensemen went even before our pick at 9, or they were in the top 15, I think. Everybody was worried about getting their next Makar.
it's
And it's a
insane how
concern.
it's
It's a
insane how
concern.
it traded. How like Montreal and New Jersey, they both picked 2 big Slovakian defensemen, and Shane
Yeah.
Wright slid down to Seattle.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to play catch up, and as a Sabres fan, you're gonna be like, wow, it's kind of crazy. We already have 2 of them, and
Yep.
Darlene and Powers that are already starting to show their potential, and these teams are getting on that now, or they're trying to build a D-core, and it takes time.
Well, how about Samuelson? Not to interrupt you, but just phenomenal. I think even maybe a little bit older, but just sound defensively. I think most teams would give their right arm to get him in a minute.
Well,
in a minute.
again, he comes from that hockey pedigree. His father was an outstanding defenseman for years too.
Yep.
So I mean, that's in
Watched
his
him.
blood. Just to poke the bear a little bit, since you brought up Shane Wright, what would you feel that are a lot of the contributing factors to him falling? Basically, you can say a couple spots or far down the draft, because he was the consensus number 1 guy for
Yeah.
months, and he ends up going 4th to Seattle, then gives the death stare to Montreal. I mean, what do we all feel that was that contributing factor? What did that? What forced their hand into picking someone else?
Obviously, for me, what I could see without looking too far in, it's got to be his attitude. Something about him that Montreal didn't like, they didn't see in him, or when you're not even willing to interview him or take him out to talk to him over dinner just to even poke his brain, that just tells me that they had no interest in even drafting him. And maybe I'm wrong. I don't know what their plan is. Maybe they want that cornerstone defenseman, which they got, but the other teams, I just think word spread, and he just slipped down to a hungry Seattle team. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, well, just hearing the guys like Leaksy and that, I believe he was injured for a while too, and that also affected his, as far as where he finished. But I do think Montreal could have been a little bit soured by his attitude. But then when you listen to their GM, unless I read it wrong, they were kind of on the fence leading up to the draft. I think maybe a day or two prior they had picked on was it the centerman they got from Slovakia? Was a
Defenseman.
centerman? I thought he was a centerman.
Defenseman.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, something must have occurred, and I don't think it was totally injury, even though I think that played a large part where they got soured by him. Absolutely.
It's just interesting to see, on a side note, how guys slid and changed in this year's draft. I don't think anyone that was slotted where they were supposed to go got drafted where they were at. I think Logan Cooley slid down from second to third. He went to Arizona.
Right.
So I think with Shane Wright and everyone taking defensemen, it totally switched up, and
Definitely helped us.
it helped us getting
I loved
some great
it
players.
because we ended up getting probably somebody that could have easily been in the top 5. And I was like, yes, when they were picking defensemen, because I knew our needs were up front. So
It's definitely definitely the Cal McCarr effect on a lot of GMs,
Oh, yeah.
where they all
Yeah.
got to go out and get that star defenseman now, which was not mentioned by any of the national media. They kind of just said, "Oh, well, what a change of foresight." When it's a copycat league. Most of them are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever somebody has, I want, and winning the Conn Smythe Trophy and having the effect McCarr did in the playoffs really pushed a lot of these GMs into looking for that stud defenseman, which Buffalo fortunately has
Yeah.
two and a half on their roster.
Yeah.
But I think attitude had played into it somewhat, just for Shane Wright to come on stage and then give the death stare to Montreal, the stink eye to Montreal, and go, "Yeah, you didn't pick me," and all he said was, "I'm the number 1 pick," and it's like, well, dude, it's like saying I'm going to win the lottery. It doesn't always work out that way. But
Well, it's either going to come back and bite him in the ass, or like somebody else that was on this team, it's going to poison maybe his outlook
His
and
chances.
somewhat of his career. I mean, I don't know. It could go either way. These kids are so young. Who knows what's going to happen? But yeah, you would think for them not to go for that all-star forward, that up and coming. I think they put him somewhere like around Matthews type, that something happened where they were like, no, take the defense.
On my note, to me, I think he's a little bit better off going to Seattle just because of the expectations there and where they need to be.
Yeah,
pressure.
he is, absolutely.
Where if he goes to Montreal, anyone
Yeah.
that goes to Montreal, it's going to be you have to instantly show
Savior.
commitment and
Yeah,
improvement
I
for the
believe
whole
so.
team, and it's rough. So
Yeah,
Plus-
and they have very educated fans in Montreal. They really do. But I think it would be immense pressure for him to go in there and kind of change the franchise. However, I agree with you, Alex. Going to Seattle is probably the best thing for him. Ron Francis, hell of a hockey player, Hall of Famer. I think if he does have any attitude, he'll probably right the ship there.
Plus, in Seattle, he's got somebody to work with already who was a high first-round draft pick in Beniers,
yep.
who he'll be able to at least
Yeah, they
kind
were
of lean
saying,
on
yeah.
and be a little bit behind. Not to make this about Shane Wright, because we really don't care about him, but just because it was a little bit of controversy of the draft. We watched the draft from end to end, sitting there going, "Don't take a defenseman, don't take a defenseman, don't take." We really didn't want Adams taking a defenseman anywhere along the line.
Yeah.
And in our last episode, we talked about size, but I'll take skill for
Any day of the
size
week.
any day of the week. It's not, again, a lot of it is a crapshoot. You roll the dice and how the player develops. Not a lot was made out of Josh Allen when he was drafted. He didn't have the best numbers. He wasn't on the best team.
Yeah.
And they've developed him into the all-star talent that he is. And,
Knew he would.
and hopefully that Meatballs there can work a little of the magic and get the same production out of those guys that we have. Farther into the draft, we took a Russian sniper.
Yep.
Played in his league, and he had almost 3 times as many goals as the next closest forward. So That was interesting because we didn't think we were going to take too many Russians, but
Yeah, I heard he was third on their list as far as Russian prospects. So when it fell to him, they were pretty happy, pretty thrilled, you know. And I will say, I do believe in what Adams is doing, his coaching staff. When that scout was on breaking down, it literally broke my heart that he had been under such poor management coaching for so long. And people like to blame the Pagulas a lot, but it's kind of like, you know, hiring your manager to right your ship, to run your store properly, because I do retail too. And you put a lot of faith in them, and I think we've been failed for so long that it actually affected a member of their staff. It actually affected a scout. And shout out to that man for, you know, calling out all the past GMs and coaches that we shall not name. But yeah, rolling in, I know we had a comment back and we appreciate it. And Jim, who watches our videos, wanted us to maybe go out, guys, get a little bit of skill without giving up too much. What's your thoughts on that heading into free agency?
well, there's going to be a lot of different names out there. There's going to be a lot of big buck names, and I know Kevin's not interested in blocking out players from making the roster. It's not going to be, he wants a top six forward, he wants a bottom six forward, and obviously he wants a goalie. So it's going to be interesting to see who fits the mold as far as which one of those players, you know, become available. We have to make the salary cap floor,
Of course.
but, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of people are going to be chasing around certain players.
Well, don't expect any Johnny Hockey here, or I don't know who else was that? Kadri.
Claude Giroux.
Two names I did hear, and I guess if you follow the fourth period, I kind of tend to believe it. Kind of could play top six, bottom six, where Mason Marchment from Florida, which would give you that grit, some goal scoring. Somebody compared him to a Johnny Hayden, but obviously with more scoring ability. And Burkowski from the Avalanche, who is a good two-way forward, showed up in the playoffs. I would be happy with either of them or both. Yes, please. I've been saying forever that if somebody was to get hurt, not that we would bring them in. You don't want a Cody Eakin going back in our lineup. You don't really want, I'm sorry, a John Hayden.
And Anders Bjork.
And Anders Bjork. You want to be able to plug somebody in this lineup, and we've discussed it and kind of debated it, that can contribute. Our division got a bit tougher, and I would welcome some grit on the wings, even if our centers stay the same. So what's your take on it, guys? Agree, don't agree, this, that?
I agree in part of thinking that we do need some top six forwards, and there might be a name out there. If I'm Adams, though, I'm probably thinking more about the goaltender situation than I am bringing in a top six forward, just because you have a good start, and if one of your kids can come up and kind of fill that hole, or you shift your lines around, you'll be ready. You'll have a good setup.
But what's the idea, just to interrupt your train of thought there, what's the idea in Adams' head by bringing in a top six forward? Because he's not expecting them to make a deep playoff run or win a cup. Why would he want to do that?
I would suppose for leadership, for depth, to solidify the line, to help the young kids.
Exactly. Take some pressure off of the young kids to say, you know, Dylan Cousins, I'm 20-something years old and I have to score goals because there's no one else.
Not only that, if you're bringing up somebody like JJ or Quinn, you want to put some meat and potatoes around them. I've said it in the last video. You don't want these kids coming up, getting run, getting intimidated. Not that they would, but I mean, clearly you look at some of the younger, smaller players in the NHL, they're always getting hurt. They're in and out of the lineup. I'm not saying they're intimidated or they would be intimidated, but it's great to have that leadership, like you guys are saying. You know, grit would be wonderful, and if they could score you 15, 20 goals, I'm all for it. I do like Vinny, and I think Vinny would be, you know, maybe a last stop, last type, you know, plug-in type of situation if you really needed to eat up a little bit of cap. But I do agree with you, though, Alex. I do believe that a goaltender is going to be a little bit more crucial.
That's
I don't
that's
think
the
we're going to get.
priority.
I don't know if you're going to get a Kemper or a Campbell. I did like the Talbot idea, and I know Guerin was he's not going anywhere. But I mean, throw them something, give them a later pick next year. Take some salary back. You know, maybe we can make a deal. Get Talbot in, Talbot. Sorry, Lawrence Talbot. Somebody that's, you know, can play. He was, and I believe he got upset when Fleury resigned. I think he thought Fleury was there for the playoffs. And wait, what a minute!
He just
what
took my
now?
job.
Yeah, I have to share the crease with this guy, and no disrespect to Fleury, I'm sure from him, but I'm sure he wants to be a starter. Holtby, unfortunately, you know, will probably have to retire due to his injury. I know Reimer would be a nice one from San Jose. Is that where he plays now currently?
San Jose, I think.
I believe San Jose.
San Jose or LA.
And I
He's,
heard
well,
Burns was rumored to get moved. I would take both of them. I mean, honestly, you would fill up some cap, have a veteran defenseman back there for Powers. Burns eats a lot of minutes. He's very offensive. Bring me Burns and Reimer. I would even take that. Would be a nice trade for us. You know.
Remember here, you heard it first, is that probably Jack Campbell will probably be the starting goalie in Edmonton, and
Yeah.
Darcy Kemper will probably be the starting goalie in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that comes out or not, we'll see what happens. But the Sabres are probably in a better position this year to obtain another goalie than they were last year, because some teams had two goalies and traded out from underneath them for whatever reason, and that put more goalies into the market.
I mean, yeah, I know Edmonton. I heard Campbell linked to him. I'm not a big believer Kemper will go there. Actually, I heard he was linked to Washington. I do think
Kemper to
Edmonton
Toronto.
is.
Kemper to Toronto.
Toronto.
I don't see Kemper going to Toronto. I heard he was linked to Washington. Sorry, you heard it here first. I just don't think they have the money to give him. I heard he's looking north of $6 million. So I don't think we'll get either, which is unfortunate. I would have given him a nice front-loaded
Well,
two-year
they're both
deal,
long-term
but
deals.
yeah.
They would both be long-term
Yeah.
deals that we're not in that position.
It's already an interesting situation, and I feel like it's not that there's not any options, but it's already starting to get a little bit tighter. You know, Ville Husso got traded, and then he signed with Detroit.
that was a
He's not
killer.
available, and some names are floating around. Toronto's gonna, I'm sure now that Mrazek's out of the way, they're gonna try everything they can to keep Campbell or sign a big name goaltender. But there's still options out there. We just heard the other day at the NHL draft that, you know, Mike Greer was talking, who's now the GM of the San Jose Sharks, and he said, you know, we got 3 goalies, and they're all gonna compete for a job, and
Absolutely.
one of them's gonna lose their job. So, you know, maybe, I don't think it's Reimer, but maybe you can snag kind of a gem from them, or you know, someone kind of under the radar. But it's definitely interesting. As we've said it before, it's a goalie carousel, because they just flip-flop around other teams.
I do think it's doable. You know, Burns, I'm probably living in fantasy land, but that would be awesome. Husso, I was a little bit upset of, only because I don't think it costs them a lot. It was a 3-year, a little over 4, and I thought that was very doable for the Sabres, considering how young he is, and the fact that he could have been a tandem. He could have been, you know, where Anderson was the 3rd goalie, he retired next year, and it could have been Husso and UPL until Levi or Portillo was ready. So me and a few fans on Twitter weren't thrilled that, now maybe Adams called, I'm not saying he didn't, but I would have liked to have known that we were involved in there somewhere, you know.
If he called for Matt Murray, he should have definitely been in on that deal.
Yeah,
Just saying.
absolutely. And Matt Murray, you can blow it,
Kiss it.
because you would have loved it in Buffalo. It's your loss. More people were upset about the 7th round pick, but I'm like, who wants a man that doesn't want to enjoy getting pounded?
I enjoyed it in
where we
Belleville,
are.
because
We'll be welcoming you with our usual appreciation of Buffalo fans when you do make your appearance here in Buffalo.
the hard
Um,
knock.
The going back to Husso just quickly, it might have been because he signed his deal immediately.
Oh,
Yeah, he
yeah.
did.
So it might have been they want you in New Jersey. Are you willing to sign a deal there? This is kind of what they're offering, or we have another deal on the table. Which do you prefer as a player? Which are you going to take? Not that there was any kind of collusion in that, but just that, I think they had a few details ironed out before the whole deal went through. I'm sure Adams did his due diligence on acquiring the goalie because he feels it's as much as a priority as the fans do. Still pursuing Jake Allen. Waiting to see what happens with Carey Price.
Yeah, I'm hearing the other way that they're probably going to keep him because they're unsure of Carey Price. So I think that'll be a no. Not that I'm real butthurt over it, but I would like an upgrade. I'm sorry. No offense to Craig. This has nothing to do with him. I'm just tired of like everybody's garbage when it comes to that position. And with the young team and the young defense, we're gonna need somebody that's gonna have to stop some pucks. Sorry,
Well,
it's not injury prone.
If you dig into analytics, like Dustin Tokarski's numbers were not much worse than like the middle of the league goalies.
Average, yeah.
I mean, he wasn't phenomenal for what he was playing, but his numbers were not like, horrible. There were other guys who were worse, who are NHL goalies. There's other guys.
Well, I don't want him on our team.
Well, I'm not saying that. I mean, he did an admirable job. And granted,
I'll just take Hauser back at this rate.
I'm not looking at our goalies and going, well, it would be okay if we had the same thing, because it's not that. As the team played better,
Yes.
the goalies'
absolutely.
numbers got better. Now it's a dual effect. Did the goalies just play better and the team got better? Did the team play better and the goalies got better? It's a two-way street. So I'm and everybody's like, well, Jake Allen's numbers weren't all that much better than Anderson's. Yeah, but Jake Allen played on one of the worst teams in the NHL.
Absolutely, yeah.
Most of the shots he faced in the league, I think he's towards the top, like per game.
Oh yeah, I can believe
It's
it.
difficult.
Over Toronto?
Over Toronto, surprisingly.
It's true. I mean, you guys are absolutely right. I should probably open my mind to the possibility that there could be a hidden gem somewhere that comes in and with an improved defensive system, plays well enough to win games. So
And Matt Murray's a perfect example of that. Won a Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh, got traded, and played in the minors last year.
Yeah, that's why I was a little bit miffed that he didn't want to come here and be somewhat of a semi-starter. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm like, we didn't even finish in the bottom 5 in the league. What is your issue? We're totally going in the right direction, which Kevin Adams for getting voted 11th for GM of the year. He was the only GM in the top 11, 12 that was a non-playoff team, which I thought hell of a job. So we are going in the right direction, and it just kind of miffs me when people are like, no, I'm not even interested. And I get it. It's been our history the past 10 years, but come on. Look at, the last half of the season, we were right in there. I mean, and I just think with a good start, and we're going to need a goalie to take advantage of some of the other teams with Bergeron or Marchand being out a couple months. I think we're going to want to jump on the other teams and get as many points as possible, because the injury bug's going to affect every team sooner or later.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on one other thing with the goaltending, as we saw in the playoffs, the depth of your goaltending really came into play because a lot of the teams used 3 goalies through the playoffs.
Or 2, starting their backup or their third stringer, like
Right.
Pittsburgh and Nashville did, Colorado even. But, Colorado won a cup. But I'm saying the other teams, it's
Yeah.
But the backup had to come in and play
Yeah.
and win some games for them in a critical series, and your depth of your goaltending shines through.
Well, everything will probably fall into place within the next week to 10 days, I'm thinking, with free agency
Which is Wednesday.
opening up. Yep, we'll see where we go from there. And sometimes somebody gets picked up or signed, and then that team's like, we got to lose some cap space. We signed so and so, and then the chips start rolling as far as trades. I've always been a bigger believer in trading for that player to come in than signing big contracts. But I think our team will be shaped again, you know, in some aspects.
Robin Leonard, you can stay out in Las Vegas. We don't want to see your face here in Buffalo again. Thank you very much. Nothing personal. And the other need that Adams talked about was defense. He wants a defenseman in there somewhere.
For Powers.
Yeah, veteran. Who do we think? Anybody in particular?
You know, we've heard his name and we've said it before, kind of float around. Maybe you slot in a trade or a pickup for Ethan Bear, because Carolina's looking to move him. I heard he's opening to kind of move around from there. He's slot in as a fifth, sixth defenseman on an already kind of stacked defensive roster. And I think he'd be a nice fit. He's 25, 26 years old, has some experience. He's a good puck-moving defenseman, and I know he more than likely won't have a huge price tag on him. We're not talking Brett Burns or Drew Doughty money, so it's an option there, right there for you.
Even if you did an offer sheet to him and he accepted it, it's still going to be in the range of a second-round pick that you're going to give in compensation, so it's not anything outrageous.
Oh, I'm all for it. I think they said he was kind of a work in progress. He's still kind of on the fence as far as his ability and where he can go. I would think, though, that for Powers, you're going to want somebody that's a little bit more proven and established in the league. I had recently mentioned Klenberg. I've kind of moved on from there. Brett Burns, I know, is but I don't know, a real stay-at-home defenseman league. I know I've said Josh Mason from the Avs. I would love to get him. He was a little bit underrated, and then come playoff time, that boy played out of his rear end, laying people out, playing defense, blocking shots. I know he's not super old, but he has been in the league a little bit longer. He showed his worth. I'm sure on a trade, you could probably prize somebody out of Minnesota. Dumba's name's been going on forever. He would eat up some salary cap. Just curious, whoever does watch this video, what you would think of Dumba coming back, because that man's going to get traded every year. And
side note, now that they've unloaded most of their team, what do you think Chicago would take for you to get Seth Jones from them?
Yeah, probably a lot. And who knows what that team. I mean, Patty's got, and Taze, and Seth to a point, got a lot of decisions to make. Do they want to stay through the rebuild, are committed to maybe that team, and really with their families and having kids, do they want to uproot them and move, or do they want the chance to actually win? I would think Seth Jones is not that old, and he'd want to move on at some point,
The shame of it is about Chicago is, we couldn't swing in on the DeBrincat deal, which would have been fantastic for us. And, everybody's in favor of bringing Pat Kane back to Buffalo to
Can have
play.
him free next year.
But it's compensation.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I
you're
discussed that today.
Yeah, if you're the GM in Chicago, you're rebuilding your team.
Yeah.
You're going to want to, get some healthy compensation back to build your team. Picking a high school kid in the first round, probably not the swiftest thing to do. 3 or 4 years away before he can come and help your team. I hope
They picked 3 defensemen in the first round.
Which I'm okay with that, but one from high
they're
school.
Stocking. I really feel bad for Chicago, maybe even a little bit more than I did for Buffalo when we started in the Regier days, because they took the youth and eliminated that and left the old veterans in, where I would have been fielding calls for a Taze or a Kane or maybe even a Strome. I don't get where the GM's going. And on the Kane note, I've talked to people, and it's like, yeah, I would love Patty Kane to come here, teach the kids. He's still an excellent goal scorer, probably one of the best North American players.
Easily American.
Yes, easily. Except if Matthews catches them. But what does it take? He's 31 years old. How much are you really gonna give them for a guy that's got maybe a few more years tops left in his tank? You know, are you gonna give him the 16th we had, or maybe our first round next year for a guy that could bail in free agency? You'll have him for free next year if he wants to come.
I don't feel bad for them because it is what it is type of league, and them winning 3 cups. But they not right now. They almost remind me a shadow of how we were last year when we dumped Risto and Sam and Jack. I mean, they're really gutting their their core players, their future.
But we
to
have
try to
the Utes
to develop
coming up.
it back. So I think they're really just ripping the page out of the playbook and starting over.
Which I think the only thing that would kind of explain them moving to Brinka would be saying he's our most valuable asset where we can acquire as much in return. So we're going to move him now. Which next year's draft is supposed to be better than this year. Of course, we hear that every year. You know, this is a deep draft, and these players are great. We hear it every year. We hear it in the NFL. We hear it in every sport. But you know, they're so worried about not paying DeBrinca because he's going to be a free agent. But yet, you've got sooner or later you're going to be freeing yourself for some salary cap.
$20 million.
Right, between Tays and Kane,
Right.
So it's a real head scratcher. Even the folks on ESPN, NHL Network were scratching their heads over it. If I was a GM, that'd be one of the pieces I'd want to keep to start my rebuild process. You know, maybe Kirby Doc didn't live up to expectations, so he was okay, move him, get a fresh start, get some prospects in return.
What about a Dylan Strom over him even?
Well, Strom, you can try and sign him away from, you know, wherever he's at. But what is it?
Chicago, dear.
That's what I mean.
Oh, I'm thinking Ryan Strom.
Of course, he's a free agent, I believe. Ryan is.
I think Ryan Strom is a free agent from the Rangers. So maybe they're thinking that they're going to put the two brothers together. I don't know.
Could be.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the rumor is Kane to the Rangers, and that's probably the one I've heard the most. And if you think about it, they do have the prospects to send back to Chicago. But if he goes there, I'm going to throw up in my mouth. Sorry. I don't like the Rangers either. And I'm not a big lover of Drury.
Buffalo boy going to the Rangers is just like,
I guess
just
it would
retire.
be worse if he went to the Leafs. But, yeah, I'd be like, dude, just retire. I'm just kidding, Patty. But, you know, I would hope next year, honestly, I would think we'd be closer. Does he want to come here and sign? Or does he never want to leave Chicago? That will be answered, I would think, you know, maybe not in the next few weeks. Maybe at the trade deadline. Maybe Chicago bottoms out and he's like, get me the heck out of here. I want to, you know, play for another cup. I want that opportunity before I get gray hair. I mean, it's a possibility. So it doesn't have to happen now. I even think, honestly, if the Sabres were on the cusp this year of making the playoffs, and I've told you this, you know, Terry would be okay with them spending money at the deadline to make that push, or you make it and you're in. And that's normally when you make that, you know, hey, that play for
pride. And
play, you know, that ploy or that play for, you know, hey, let's we're not going to win the cup, but, you know, let's get past the first round. We have expectations. Let's roll the dice, I mean, and see what happens.
Just don't overpay.
What we really need this year is another COVID cup where, you know, so many teams, I'm just kidding,
the
so many
qualifying
teams
rounds.
make it. But yeah, it'll be definitely interesting, I think, and, you know, you said Wednesday. I usually look, you know, players tend to, from Wednesday maybe up to 7 to 10 days, we've seen players kind of sit on their hands and lull it over. They don't always make decisions. People that are watching this know that. They've followed hockey long enough, so, or they lull over the deals, who's paying me more, where do I want to go, where does my family want to end up, you know? So.
For future podcasts, we'll be probably discussing playoff format because we'd like to throw the old one out the window. Gary Bettman, I'll be calling you later in the week just to let you know that we want a different playoff format because this current one stinks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just to touch on something I read this afternoon, I guess Engvall is probably going to be on his way out from Toronto. He's in a contract situation, and they're going to struggle to sign him. So our viewers in Toronto, enjoy that John Tavares contract that you are sucking up because you're going to end up gutting the rest of your team out. I'm sure you got a happy Stanley Cup card from Nazem Kadri. And again, your GM there is slowly eroding the inside of your team out because you're probably going to have to trade Nylander, who is one of your best performers in the playoffs. And again, you had another quality goalie who's running out of town because he's faced more rubber than a tire factory. So enjoy that.
This is our leaf bashing, 5 minutes of leaf bashing. No, I mean, honestly, Matthews, hell of a hockey player. I do think when his contract's up, he may bail and go to Arizona. But, you know,
Matthews will never win a cup until he learns the Alex Ovechkin lesson. You have to play defense.
Two sides of the ice.
But we're going to wrap up here, guys. I hope you enjoyed the second part. Or, Episode 2. Again, if you want to hear us discuss anything in particular, you think of any topics you'd like us to discuss, please leave it in the comments. We're going to try to do them weekly. We may go outside of hockey. We might do football, lacrosse. We got a big lacrosse fan here. Anything in the area that's going on, just let us know in the comments. Thanks for stopping by.
Questions are also welcome anytime. Just keep it, video related, nothing personal, and let's keep the comments in line, folks. Enjoy.
Have a good week.
Peace.